So here I am ironing my fabric. And I am going to lint roll it. Now this is the fabric that is going to go around the stool cover, not on the seat. On the seat I will have a faux leather. So I'm just ironing this out, and then I'm going to pin my pattern piece to it. So as you pin, you want to make sure that you are smoothing everything out at the same time. And be sure to pin in your seam allowance. So now I am going to use my fabric cutting scissors to cut this out. You want to have scissors to cut paper, you want to have scissors to cut fabric, you want to have scissors to cut thread. You cannot do all three of those with the same scissors. You want to try to keep the fabric and the pattern laying down. So when I finish one side, I went to the other side. You want to make sure that everything is smooth. You don't want the fabric to get bunched up or anything while you're cutting. So in the previous video, I said that I would cut this out in leather and in stretch, but I decided to just cut it out in a cotton fabric and then cut it out in a stretch fabric. So here I am showing you another way to cut it out. This is my stretch fabric, and instead of pinning it down, I use my pattern weights. And these weights are washers that I picked up from my local hardware store, so you can get those as well. But yes, I just put the pattern weights on here and cut it out. Now this is my leather for the seat. And technically you are not supposed to iron this, but I didn't like the wrinkles in it, so I just flipped it over on the back, and on a low setting I did little circles on the back side to get some of the wrinkles out. So now I am going to fold it in half and in half again so that we can cut out our circle piece. So I picked up these little clamps from Amazon.com, and I absolutely love them for this type of task because the leather is so thick. Of course, pinning it is out of the question. So these clamps really help hold a lot of layers of fabric in place. So when I have the leather folded, I will place my pattern piece on top of it, clamp that down, and then begin to cut. If you would like to see a tutorial on how I got my nails like this, please check that out. So now we are ready to cut. So I'm just going to hold everything firm and still with one hand and cut around the curve with my other hand. And there it is. So now I am going to take the two long strip pieces, put right sides together, and sew along one side. And I have already pinned some of it, so I'm just going to pin the rest of it and then head over to the sewing machine. So here I'm just putting my bobbin in. I love this sewing machine. It is the Brother JX2517. I picked it up from Walmart. So I put my bobbin in with some black thread on it, and now I'm putting a spool of black thread on the top, and here I am just threading my machine. The Brother machines are really easy. And when you thread your machine, it helps to cut the thread at an angle. It makes it easier to put the thread through the eye of the needle. So now it is time to sew. I am taking my gauge to make sure that my seam allowance matches up with where my needle is, and then I will just sew down that side. Because I was sewing a firm cotton material with a jersey stretch material, the top layer, which was the jersey material, wanted to shift a little bit, so I used my awl to help me with that. And the awl is the little pointy thing that you see me holding here. And remember, you want to back stitch at the beginning and the end so that it does not unravel. And there you go. So here I am doing a casing in the jersey fabric. This is where my elastic is going to go, so that I can take the cover on and off. in my chair cover tutorial. If you have not seen that, please go check that out. I did a drawstring method in the bottom, and for this one I decided to just do an elastic because I didn't want the drawstring hanging down and getting in the way. So because this is a casing, you know you want to leave a little gap so that you can insert your elastic. And after you insert the elastic, you're going to sew the gap up. So I ended up top stitching the firm fabric down. If you would like to see how I top stitch, please comment about that below. So now I am taking this, which is the outer part of the stool, and I am going to pin it to what will be the seat of the stool, the top part of the stool. So this process is a little tricky. You have to do a lot of pulling, stretching, wiggling, a lot of different things to make sure that everything fits properly. So you all can just watch me do this. And this is what it should look like after you have it all pinned around. So now I am just going to head over to the sewing machine and sew around with my seam allowance. And with the leather being kind of stretchy, I just kind of pulled it a little bit to help everything blend in together. And you want to make sure that you flatten out the cotton fabric so that you don't have a lot of puckering. So you can kind of see how I'm pulling it and pushing it through at the same time. And these pins are pretty thin, which is why I can kind of get away with sewing over them, but I wouldn't recommend it. Sometimes the needle can hit the pin and either bend the pin or break the needle, so you always want to be safe. So now I'm just removing the pins, and I'm going to flip it right side out, and as you can see, the cover is forming nicely. So this is the elastic that I am going to put in my little casing. So first I want to kind of measure how much elastic I would need in order to stretch it over the top of the seat. So after I get that, I'm just going to put a safety pin through one end and then put it through the casing. You want to make sure that you hold the other end of it because you don't want to lose it in the casing. So when I have both of the ends out, I hook the other end on the safety pin and try to even it out a little bit. I also tried to make sure that the elastic was laying in the same direction. But when I got to the sewing machine, I think I ended up turning the elastic over or something like that. But in the end, it really didn't matter because the elastic, it needs to be able to stretch wide enough to get over the seat, and then when the casing is up under the seat, it will shrink together in order to hold the cover onto the stool. So you all will see what I'm talking about. So now I'm just sewing up the little hole in the casing. Make sure that you clip your threads with your thread cutting scissors. And then the cover is complete. So here I am. I'm just going to put it on there to make sure that everything looks good. And it really does. I have a little pucker right there, but that's okay. So this is the bottom. You see how the elastic really holds it on there nicely. And I think overall it really turned out great. The vision that I had was really executed. And seeing the finished cover, you can kind of see why I took the measurements that I did. So yeah, that is my stool cover. I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you have any other things that you would like me to sew, please comment about that below. Thanks for watching.